everybody, welcome to the very first episode of Adventure Addiction. I'm Mick and this is beautiful Fraser Island. Just come across for a few days. Hopefully I can show you some of this magnificent place. So come along. Well, the weather here today is absolutely beautiful. When you come across to Fraser, there's a couple of different ways you can get to the island. They run barges from River Heads, which is just south of Hervey Bay, and they also run barges from Inskip Point, which is just north of Rainbow Beach. I've come across this morning from Inskip Point, so just come around the bottom of Fraser, and I'm just currently heading up 75 Mile Beach, so plan to stop in at Eurong. There's a beautiful little bakery in there, grab a coffee and something to eat, then go and check a bit of the island out. On my way into Central Station, I left the beach and went up through Eurong. Now at Eurong, there's a shop there if you're chasing supplies, fuel, bait, ice, tackle, groceries. There's also accommodation there as well if you're not wanting to camp. But there's a bakery too, and I can highly recommend the Tucker. It's pretty good, especially the coffee and donuts. So I can highly recommend coming for a drive through the centre of the island, just to check out the rainforest and the vegetation and the trees that grow here. It truly is incredible when you stop and have a look at the size of some of these trees and the height that they grow to and the plant life that is here, and to think it's all just growing out of sand. Now I believe Fraser is one of the very few places in the world where you get this sort of environment where this plant life can flourish and grow just out of sand. It really is incredible. Welcome to Central Station. Just about to head down, check it all out. There's a little clearing down here with a couple of the old huts down here, some of the old equipment, logging equipment, and a lot of history on the island. Really is well worth checking it out. And then beyond that, there's a beautiful little creek, got a boardwalk that runs down beside it, so let's go and check it out. So they say you learn something new every day. And I didn't realise until just now, reading some of the information here, that Fraser Island in World War II was actually used as a secret training base for some commandos. They've got a relic of an old gun that was used, they've mortar shells, but not only that, they've got logging equipment here and old saws and blades and an old cart that they used to drag the logs out on, and a tractor as well. And when you stop and read the history of the island and what people achieved is absolutely incredible, and it's so good to come down here and check it out, and you really do get an appreciation for what has been done to build what we have now and can come and visit and enjoy. So spend a bit of time and come down and have a look and read up on the information. It really is worth it. So I decided from Central Station I wanted to head down into Lake Mackenzie. You'll see a lot of the tracks on the island itself through the centre, past Central Station and into Lake Mackenzie and a few other spots. They are one-way tracks, so you don't have to be too concerned with meeting a tour bus or another vehicle head-on. Any of the tracks that are a two-way track, they do have a reasonable amount of pull-off areas and little bays that you can just get to one side to let other vehicles pass. Coming down into Lake Mackenzie, you'll see it is a very beautiful spot. The sand, the water, and I was pretty keen to put a drone up. I'd never had a look from the air, so I put a drone up to get an aerial perspective of the lake. Now the lake itself, it is 150 hectares in area. At its longest it's 1.2k long, and at its widest it's 930 meters wide, and it carries an average water depth of about 5 meters. Now the water in the lake itself, it does house a few species of fish, but the water itself is actually that pure that it is unsuitable for a lot of species. And you'll see the color of the sand is just pure white in spots, and it is actually pure white silica. So if you're coming out into Lake Mackenzie, just keep in mind it is probably the most popular lake on the island, and in peak season it can get really busy, so certainly well worth the effort though. Absolutely beautiful little spot. So I've just come from Central Station, back through the island to Eurong, just about to jump down on the beach, head north up 75 Mile Beach. Absolutely love it when you come through here. You drop down onto the sand, onto the beach, you got the ocean, the salt, the smell. Hang a left and head north up 75 Mile Beach. It's just beautiful. She can be a bit soft sometimes coming out these exits and entries, so just keep a few revs up and you'll be right. I remember the very first time coming to Fraser Island as a kid, rattling down the beach and pulling up at the Maheno and to hop out, and it was the coolest thing to see this real shipwreck. And every time I've come back to Fraser since, I still go and check out the Maheno, and you know, this time I couldn't help but feel a little bit sad to see how much has disappeared and how much has deteriorated, and to think it's not going to be long before this boat disappears altogether. Just a little bit of brief history on the Maheno. It was built in Scotland in 1905. It was an ocean liner owned by a company in New Zealand, and it had a regular route between Australia and New Zealand, and later it was commissioned as a hospital ship in Europe during World War I and went and served in the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. And it was then in 1935 it was sold to Japan for scrap, and I believe it was when it was under tow to Japan, a cyclone snapped the tow chains, and after numerous attempts to reattach the chains, they couldn't, so the Maheno just drifted helplessly until it landed where it sits today. So a lot of history on the boat, guys. Check it out if you get a chance. But if you get the opportunity, come over and experience it for yourself before it disappears. It really is well worth it. I've just pulled up at Indian Head. I'm about to go through the bypass track to get around Indian Head. A couple of guys have just been snatched out. They went down in the sand, so I normally like to pull up and just have a quick look. I'm going to jump out and just go for a walk just to check it out. It doesn't look too bad in places, so I'll yeah, jump out, have a squiz, and then we'll get into it. So she's a little bit soft. There's another 2 cars gone down already. Tyre pressure's the one reason. I'd say the other, there's no momentum, so I'm just going to turn around, duck back up the beach a bit, just get a bit of momentum before I hit it. We should be right. Soft, all right. Wow. That was really soft. I didn't expect it to be that bad. It's probably just a good idea to, I always like to keep the revs up probably a little bit more than you may think you need, just in that case that you've got the revs there to push through when it wants to start and bog down. As I come through, there was another couple behind me that went down as well, so it was a lot softer than I expected. Anyway, we're through out the other side and we're hoping to get to the top tonight, So we're trying to get up to Sandy Cape this afternoon, but try and go through the Nagala bypass there. It's pretty soft, pretty sandy. There was a couple of cars down, one was towing a boat, so we went and checked it out. It just wasn't going to happen, so we've just come back down the beach a little bit, found a nice campsite. Just boiling up some water, make a cuppa, sit back and relax, so can't complain with the view here. When you camped on Fraser, just make sure your food is in well sealed and well secured containers. The old dingoes have a great sense of smell and they're not afraid of coming into a camp to find some food, so just keep that in mind. The other thing too is when you come to Fraser, you will need a vehicle permit to have a vehicle on the island, and you will also need a camping permit as well. There are a lot of different campsites on the island to choose from, so you can jump online, you can choose which camp area you want to camp in, you can order your permit online and do it all online. So just keep in mind you will need these things before you come over to the island, because the rangers do come around and they do make sure that permits are in place. come up to Nagala Rocks this morning. Just come through the Coffee Rock. Now there's a fair sand stretch to get down onto the beach the other side. Yesterday afternoon there was a lot of people stuck here. So tyre pressures once again is critical. I've dropped my front down to 14, I've got the back at about 18, and I've dropped the tinny trailer down to 8 psi simply because there's not much weight in it. So low range, keep the revs up, and we'll give it a shot and see how we go. Once you get through Nagala Rocks, it's a pretty straight run up the beach to the top of Fraser, up around the corner to Sandy Cape. If you go right around the corner, you can get up to the lighthouse there. It's worth a look. There's a bit of history up there as well on the first lighthouse keepers and such. There's even a site where there's an old World War bunker down there as well. You just got to be careful when you're running up the beach. On some of the high tides, some sections of the beach can become pretty much impassable, so you just got to watch your tides coming up and down if you're just doing a day trip. But other than that, come up and enjoy. It really is a beautiful part of the island. You know, if you were to ask me what part of Fraser I love the most, without a doubt, it would be the top of Fraser. When you first come around that corner at Sandy Cape and the colours in the water and the sand blows, I don't know what it is, but to me there's just something about it that I just absolutely love. Well, we're up at the top of Fraser, up at Sandy Cape. I've just been and picked out a campsite, dropped some of the gear off. We're going to unload the tinny. I've got a couple of shark lines in, then we'll run some baits out. Hopefully hook up to a shark or two. See how we go. So what I'm going to do is still have to stick the rod in this, just a PVC rod holder. But because I've got to run the bait out myself in the tinny, I need to dig this in a fair way just so the rod doesn't pull over in the sand. I haven't got anything real technical, just a hook and a mullet head, so I've got the drag on that reel slightly, just enough to keep resistance, so I'll run it out and see what happens. So you can see the weather over here was just brilliant. I really couldn't have asked for any better conditions. I hadn't long got back from running the first bait out, pulled the tinny up on the beach, and the water police turned up. You know, why is it the first feeling you get is, oh crap, what have I done? But I'll just clarify, I hadn't done anything wrong. I'll clarify that. No, they were a good couple of guys just doing routine checks, but I tell you what, they do their job well. They went through everything right from boat rego, trailer rego. You know, they wanted to look at the fishing gear, what was in the esky. They wanted to know what I was targeting, and even the regulations surrounding what I was targeting. But you know what? I'm all for it. I think it is a great thing, you know, whether it's the water police, the normal police, the rangers, the fisheries. I'm glad they're on the island patrolling it, because you know what? If we're all playing by the rules, we've got nothing to worry about. And it's all about preserving this island, and it is such an asset to Australia. And I'm all for preserving it. You know, I want my kids to be able to bring their kids over here and enjoy the same things we can enjoy. So once the water police had gone, well, there wasn't a great deal to do, but you know, occasionally check the fishing line, or maybe have a sleep in my chair on the beach. That's the beauty of this place, guys. You're on island time, you know. You can sit back, you can chill out, relax, just take it all in. While I was sitting there on the beach, there was a sea eagle I'd noticed had been just buzzing around, and it had a chick with it as well, and it was really cool to see. Like, I love these birds. I reckon they're awesome. Anyway, I had a bit of spare fish there, so this thing wanted to come in and, you know, check this out. It was really cool to see. So some places, well, Fraser Island for one of them, you're not allowed campfires in a lot of places. So what I normally carry is just a thermal cooker. I'm just going to cook up some corned beef. It's pretty simple. I've had the water boiling, so it's come to the boil now. For the corned beef to add to the water, it's got a bit of brown vinegar, a bit of brown sugar, and some mustard. So approximately a cup of vinegar, that'll do. And the same with the brown sugar. Probably should have done this the other way around. I got vinegar in my sugar. So just a cup of brown sugar, roughly. And about a tablespoon of mustard. Just give that a bit of a stir up. Mix it all in. And then it's as simple as you just chuck the corned meat in with it. Now the corned meat's got to boil for about 10 minutes. So we'll let that boil for about 10 minutes, and then we just chuck some veggies in with it, and then it'll sit in the pot for a minimum of 3 hours. I normally like to let it sit there for about 5. So the corned meat's been in there boiling for 10 minutes. It's just as simple as chucking some veggies in with it. I've just got carrots and potatoes. Now you don't necessarily need to peel your veggies. I just chuck them in, make sure they're clean, just chuck them in there. So we simply just let that boil for another 10 minutes, turn it off, and then we'll stick it in the the thermal cooker itself and leave it there for about 5 hours. So that's been boiling for the last 10 minutes. It's as simple now as just chucking it in this thermal housing. So the one I've got is called a Dream Pot. Now I'll leave that in there for about 5 hours. They recommend a minimum of 3, and it'll still be hot enough to eat after 12 hours. So in situations where you can't have campfires and obviously camp ovens and such, I do like to carry this because you can cook obviously corned meat in it, soups, you can do all sorts of different stuff. So it's a really good second option. The sunset was just gorgeous, it really was. It was so beautiful to sit back and watch, and so as the sun went down, the old temperature went with it. I'll tell you what, she started to get a bit fresh. Even had to pull the old beanie out. Bit of an onshore ocean breeze coming in, which kept it pretty crisp. Now I hadn't had any inquiries on the bait pretty much all afternoon, so not long before sunset I'd just run another one out, but I just didn't send it out quite so far, and it was later on that night when we got a first inquiry, and I tell you what, this thing, once it was hooked, it just went and went and went. Felt like a freight train, seriously. Anyway, you'd get some line in and it'd take it, and you'd get some more back in and it'd take it. So I'll let you see how this all ended. Oh, you can't with them all, can you? I guess that's fishing, eh? So I went and ran another bait out, and I guess it would have been 3-4 hours later, I suppose, where I finally got another run, and you know, just like the first one, this one was just a freight train. It just peeled line after line. You know, in all honesty, the gear I had was just too small for these fish. Like the drag on this reel, it was getting pretty hot. You could smell it. And then it just started to grab, which obviously just stressed the line too much. And as you can see, it just busted me off. But you know what? It's all part of the fun. It's all part of the learning. Next time I come back, it'll be with a lot bigger gear. Unbelievable, eh? Hook two good runs. I don't know what happened to that one. The drag on the reel was starting to play up. She could smell it. She's getting pretty hot. Started to grab a bit, so don't know whether that stressed it a bit too much, but anyway, that's fishing, eh? So after a much needed sleep in, I woke to another gorgeous day. It really was. I mean, just have a look at it. So I sat around on the beach for a few hours and did a whole lot of not much, and then I went for a walk up to the lighthouse. And I tell you what guys, when the weather over here is this nice, it is just stunning up at the lighthouse. So the lighthouse itself was constructed and then shone its first light on the 19th of May 1870. Now that light came from a wick which was fueled either by whale oil or rapeseed oil. They estimate the lighthouse itself used 1,200 tonne of steel and concrete to construct, and each panel on the lighthouse is estimated to weigh up to 3.5 tonne. Now when you think back then, that would have been a massive effort to get all this material up to then build this lighthouse. So in 1900 the light was updated to a kerosene fired mantle which was rotated by a clockwork mechanism. but that mechanism had to be wound every hour by a lighthouse keeper just to keep the light rotating. It was then in 1930 that this mechanism was updated to be powered by electricity. But then it was 1995 before this lighthouse became fully automated. They reckon the light on the lighthouse on a clear night can be seen for up to 28 nautical miles. So even though the lighthouse is fully automated, they still have regular caretakers over here to make sure everything's maintained and kept clean and to ensure the light still continues to shine. So the walk up from the beach, the lighthouse here, is about 1.2k and it's all uphill, so a little bit of an effort to get here, but with a view like that, she's well worth it. While you're at the top of Fraser, and if you've got kids with you, or if you're just a big kid at heart, which, well, apparently I am, grab yourself some cardboard, or if you've got a toboggan, bring it over and come for a climb up these sand blows and go for a scoot back down them. It really is a ton of fun. I've just included some footage of an earlier trip I went over with my boys, and we spent hours up and down these sand dunes, and they had an absolute ball, and even to this day it's still one of their favourite memories they brought back from the island. You can see here, putting into perspective the size of these sand blows, they really are pretty cool. So by the time I'd finished at the lighthouse and come back down the beach and gone for a walk up the dunes, the day was pretty much over, and like they say, time flies when you're having fun. But just as gorgeous as the day was, the sunset, it was probably even better. Like, just have a look at it. It really was beautiful, and it's something else just to stand at the end of the day and salt water lapping at your feet to watch the sun go down in this setting. It really was just magic. It was time for me to start and head back down the island. I had to catch a barge the next day to head back home. On the way down the island, I wanted to stop in at Eli Creek, and this part of the island really is a remarkable little spot. Eli Creek itself, there's millions and millions of litres of water that just come up out of the island and flow out to sea, and they've set it up really nicely here. You've got boardwalks, you can walk up the side of the creek, and you can hop in the creek and swim down it. Take something to float on, you can float down the creek as well, and there's amenities there too. Just be careful with Eli Creek though. At certain times, half tide, high tide, it can become impassable to get up the beach. And even at low tide, just take care as to where you're trying to cross the creek, because I have learned from experience that if you cross in the wrong spot, or try to cross in the wrong spot, it will swallow you up. We've just decided to pop down into a couple of the camping grounds, which are right at Central Station themselves. Well worth a look if you want a bit of a change of scenery to come and camp here. They've got designated camp areas set out. There's tables, there's chairs, full amenities, showers, toilets, the whole works. But it's set in, it is beautiful rainforest. Like, there's trees down, there's moss, there's ferns. It is absolutely unreal. So if you're wanting a couple of nights or whatever, a bit of a change from beach camping, it's well worth a look to come into the Central Station campgrounds. They're all dingo fenced as well, which is really good for the kids if that's a bit of a worry for you. So come down and have a look. It really is a beautiful little spot. It was another beautiful morning on Fraser, but for me my time was up. I had to get out onto the beach and head back down the island. I had to catch a barge to get back home again. It's always a little bit sad when I leave a place like this, but you know, for me that's a gauge of how good a place is. I just hope, guys, I've been able to show you a little of how beautiful Fraser is and how special it is, and if you get the opportunity to come over and experience it for yourself, please do. It really is well worth it. But until next time, guys, live it, love it, and look after it.